What's going on is Anton from AntonDaniels.com. I appreciate you guys for continuing to rock with me. I got a phenomenal interview. I don't even know how I was able to land this one. I think I'm going to just have to give all of the credit over to my wife, Rita, because she do all of the hard work. I do the easy part. I just do the talking. You know what I'm saying? So, but I want to introduce you guys to Malik, a.k.a. Cybertr0n, and we'll get into where that come from in a minute. But, man, I'm glad to have you here, man. I appreciate you coming through, big dog.
Yes, sir. No problem.
So before we get started, I'd kind of like to give people a little bit of a history. I do my interviews organically, right? I am familiar with a little bit of who you are. However, I don't like to ask questions just based off of a list of questions that I already got wrote out. I like to kind of mine out who people are and just kind of organically had a conversation. But more importantly, born and raised here in Detroit.
Yes, sir. West Side.
West Side of Detroit. You've been a DJ in Detroit. You've been immersed in the culture and things like that. But at some way, somewhere along the way, you got kind of caught up in computers, right?
That's a nice way of putting it.
Well, I mean, I don't know the lingo or anything like that, but basically, you came up in what, in the 80s and the 90s here in Detroit?
Mm-hmm. My whole life.
And then now you would consider yourself, I'm assuming, what, an ethical hacker?
No, I pretty much leave that to all the young guys. My focus now is just education, Africology, history, culture, archaeology.
Why did you? Because I mean, I know it's the life, right? We never really walk away from, like, even me, my degree is in software engineering, right? And even though I've moved into corporate America and things like that, you never really get away from the love of it, because that's just kind of something that you kind of fall into. How did you get into, doing what you do now versus the things that you love to do, I guess, before?
The simplest way to summarize it would be me and the U.S. government didn't get along, and they labeled me as a terrorist.
The U.S. government labeled you as a terrorist?
Yes, sir. I was in court and talking in the back with my attorney.
Okay.
Had to prepare myself and get ready, so I walked in a little bit late. I believe it's Judge Paul Boardman. That was my judge over my case, and of course, the government Secret Service was discussing this individual, which at the time I thought they was finishing up with somebody else. Mm-hmm. And they was naming the history and what he did and this and that. And overall, he got to the point where he said he's a terrorist. He associate with known organized crime individuals. He's this, he's that. He's running a criminal enterprise. So I'm thinking, like, damn, they about to give him the book. He's jacked.
Man, you just listening.
Yeah, and then he finished up, also known as Cybertron, also known as Malik, Mr. Pasha. And I'm like, oh,
your
you
hard
talking
drive?
about me.
Okay, all right. So let's back up. Let's back up for a minute, all right? So born and raised in Detroit. You was a DJ, though.
Still a DJ.
Yeah, but I mean, that was the thing that you were largely known for in the city, was DJing and stuff like that.
And I belong to a group called the Dancing Bears that me and another friend of mine by the name of John started back in the 80s when we was clubbing at the dancery.
Oh, so you for real immersed in the culture.
Oh,
A lot of people not familiar
so.
with the dancery.
Oh, yeah. If anybody who's in a, maybe 40s, 50s, everybody
50s.
knows
Yep.
the dancery was the spot. If you could dance, wanted to know how to dance, wanted to hear all the latest jams, Fingers and Zap was on the turntables, and you went to the dancery. If it got shot up, you walking over dead bodies to get out, and you still coming back next weekend.
Yeah. So that was the culture. 80s, 90s. Yeah, man. And then, but you was living a completely separate life, though. How old were you at this time?
I was in my early 20s.
When you first started getting into computers and things like that in your early 20s?
I early started getting into computers when I was around 19.
Okay.
My parents bought me a Tandy TX 1000 so that I could, get into this culture they heard that was coming about called computers and whatnot. and they wanted to give me an advantage.
Right.
So they bought me a Tandy, and it just
Oh,
basically.
you was one of the lucky kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty dope. So then, so your parents bought you a computer, but you still just a regular, you know, person every day, DJing, having fun.
Yep, just going to college.
Yep. And at some point, I'm guessing that you realized that you were a lot more talented than regular everyday people that were just using computers.
Well, at that time, nobody even knew what a computer was. It would take almost a decade before people even was familiar with the term email address. The internet was in its very basic stages. Everybody was basically using BBSs, or you would use Merc, MRIC.
Yep.
You'd be in chat groups. But as it came about and more people started learning about the internet, by that time my life was turned upside down.
What do you mean by turned upside down?
For a period, I was on the run. You know, when the government come after you, they want you to turn yourself in.
So what was the
vanished.
majority of what it is that you did? Like, what was the foundation, right? Okay, they buy you a computer, and then, you know, you start to experiment, and you just messing around or whatever, so on and so forth. What's the discovery? Like, you know, how do you know? Because, like you said, at that stage, people didn't even really know what a computer was, right? So I'm assuming that the government didn't even, like, the term hacker wasn't even a thing back then.
Just barely. Yeah, it wasn't really a thing. I mean, maybe in a very small geek communities, but outside of that, no, not at all.
So at what point do you discover, or do you think that, all right, listen, I'm about to go down this path, or, you know, maybe I'm doing something that may not be, you know, on a up and up? Because it was, at that time, it's the Wild Wild West.
Yes. Beautiful, though. Beautiful. The easy way to sum it up, I wanted to see something called ANSI graphics.
Okay.
And I was told that for me to see ANSI graphics, I would have to use a program called Telex.
Okay.
And after that, the conversation went quiet. So, you know, I'm asking, okay, so how do I get Telex? Nobody has answered my question. So, you know, anybody knows me, I'm persistent when it comes to getting information. And after days of getting ignored, this guy by the name of Cybertr0n, he says, dude, if you want Telex, that's wares. I'm like, wares? What does that mean? He was like, that's software that's illegal. If you just download it, you're supposed to buy it. So, you know, I'm young. I don't have no money, and how do I supposed to buy some software that's online? So I was like, man, just give me the software. So he told me, you will have to earn that. So I was like, what do I have to do to earn it? Because, you know, I'm not understanding this. And
How old are you at this time?
I'm probably around 20, 21.
Okay.
And I just stayed online.
What is this thing that you was looking for, though? What exactly is it? Because you got to remember, and I got to break it down from a C student's perspective, because the majority of the people that's watching this, they have no clue probably what you're talking about.
Well,
right?
back in the day when you would log into a BBS system, you would use dial-up modems.
Oh, right.
And when you connect to the BBS, the graphics was either black and white or black and green, and it looked horrible.
Okay.
ANSI graphics had color. It looked more prettier, and it gave the layout a more beautiful effect on the eyes compared just looking at a bunch of crazy screen information.